Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Late Night with Chefs. Truffle Boy and Doug reporting for duty here tonight. And we have another amazing guest chef for this evening. Everybody get comfortable. Doug, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in with us tonight. Tonight we have the chef Luke Rogers coming to us from Texas. If you guys saw our post, you know that he is definitely got some accolades behind him, and we are very grateful to have him on the show tonight and to share a little bit of his perspective. How are you doing tonight, chef?
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm extremely excited. I've been watching your show forever. Jeremiah
Oh, I
Tower,
appreciate that.
that blew my mind, man. I'm so excited.
That was
Yeah,
definitely
that
an
was
awesome pod, and
it
our
was.
minds were blown equally. So,
Yeah,
um,
I'm like, Blood, guess who just replied to our DM? Guess. It was definitely awesome to be able to record someone's story of that stature and just the different years and levels of experience that he has. That's really our big mission here, and what we hope to continue is it's more about recording everyone's different perspectives and almost like a little blurb into everyone's lives, which we feel really honored to be able to do.
Yeah, I
100%.
agree. That's awesome.
We're super excited to have you on the pod. Chef Luke, if you could, give us a little background, give us, what got you going in this game, what made you passionate, what keeps the hunger going.
Yeah. So I started as a kid, washing dishes just like everybody else. You get in the kitchen because you want to buy a car. And so, you're back there making your $7 an hour scrubbing dishes. And so I wanted to work the line. And so I worked my way up. That's what I did. I was in Memphis, Tennessee, small town, but has some great chefs. And so, I was slaving back there, just learning how to work the kitchens, learning what chefs do. And I was actually going to go to college, like a regular college, and start a career instead, but decided to go to culinary school. And so when I did that, the chefs in my school were like, "Hey, you work at like a cool like small pizza restaurant, but you need to go to like the best restaurants in Memphis." And so that's what I did. I started working with Andrew Michael Italian Kitchen, and they've been in like James Beard Awards every year for I think it's like 12 years, something like that, crazy. I'm getting my footing in all these kitchens in Memphis, trying to learn and grow, and that's where I got my first sous chef position back there too. 83 at the Madison Hotel. And so then it moved on. I come to Dallas, got into hotels back in Memphis. And so I was staying in the hotel game. I went to Italy. I worked at a 2 Michelin star restaurant over there. It was in Norcia and Umbria. And so that's a great food place, like tons of truffles. Truffle Boy likes that, they're awesome. We went
When you
truffle
said
hunting.
Umbria, that's like resonates hard
That's
because
heaven.
that's literally where I get all my truffles from are from Umbria, Italy, because
No way.
there's multiple generations of family who are growing wherever their land is. I'm not even sure. Like I said, my truffle plug just these are Umbria truffles. These are Umbria truffles.
Yeah.
And right now there's white spring truffles in season. I'm super excited to get my hands on that.
Oh, nice.
So
So, chef, to divulge a little bit into that, that's a really interesting take. I know, a lot of us who are in this culinary growth, the idea of working in another country is so fascinating. But obviously, there's this, very real process of, how am I going to get a visa? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to be able to work? Can you give us a little backstory, into what does that, actual transition look like in real time?
Yeah. Well, I think for some people it was harder than for me. Like for me, it was really just having the connections with chefs that I was with already. And so they had those connections. They had friends. They had a plan. They knew where they were going to go. And so that's a difference, versus for other people, they do think about stuff like that. Like, how do I get a visa? All that. I didn't really worry about any of that. It was get your passport, make sure you go there. Just we're going in the summer. You gotta just dive in and take in everything possible. And so while other people, like there was people from France and Spain and Germany all in this kitchen over there, and at the end of the nights and things like that, they're all going out and partying, getting drunk, all that stuff. I wasn't doing any of that. Like my free time was spent in my hotel room to go back to the restaurant, because I was there for one purpose and one purpose alone, and to learn from these great chefs. And that's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about anything else. So if you ask me what Rome was like, I can't tell you. I was there to be in that kitchen. And so it was a different mindset. I was just trying to grind and get the job done.
I love that, hunger and ambition. And, for, people in the industry across the board, how did you say no to those temptations, that peer influence of, let's go have a late night drink. Let's go, because you also, in those moments, even though they usually, lead to bad activities, you kind of build that relationship, that team, that team culture, I would say. Usually that happens, after, when you're like, all right,
when the bad decisions we all made the bad decision.
Right. But I'm saying, for people across the board, what was, one of those things, or how did you, avoid those situations? And, what were those things that you said, like, no, I'm not going to have a beer, when you were offered to go have a late night, after shift, drink or whatnot, or shenanigans after shift, which happened, every night of any day of the week, whether it's Monday or Sunday. That's like a lot of line cooks' goals, And you were saying, you worked as a sous chef and obviously that comes into play with that mentality. I think, when you get into that management position, you separate yourself. But as a line cook, were you a line cook in that situation as well? And, how did you kind of avoid giving into those temptations?
Yeah. So in that line cook situation here in the United States, it's one thing. Because first off, I was underage, for the most part of it until, I was 21 and I was a sous chef. And so that was an easy transition for me. Obviously when you're in the restaurants, they'll pop open a beer or whatever while you're cleaning. You're like, all right, cool. Let me drink this. It's like, is this okay? But then you're cleaning and stuff like that, but I would never go out. And really that was that mindset of saying, I want to do one thing and one thing alone. And it ended up being sometimes even more my friends that weren't in the restaurant with me, the guys I live with and stuff, it would be like, hey, let's hang out. Let's do this. Let's do that. Like, guys, no, I'm tired. Like, I know like you're living your normal person life, but I'm beat. Like I did 90 hours this week. I got to sleep, and just get ready back for work again. And so there was never that time for me to be able to just say, yeah, whatever, I'll call out tomorrow, things like that. Because, chefs I work with, like you call out, they're like, you better come in here and show us you're sick. We want to see it. So
bring that doctor's note tomorrow.
Right. And I was never going to do that. So I always worked hard through it and, had my mind set on what I wanted to be. And so, saying I would rather be a sous chef. And so then getting to that position, really young to be a sous chef, in that I had to elevate myself and separate myself too. And so it's a natural separation that you say, I'm not going to hang out with these guys, even though I want to. Like, I know we're the same age or whatever, like, or just like, we want to have fun together. We like each other. I just always said no. And so there was times in that ended up getting kind of lonely, but there's other times that I was glad because I kept on elevating myself, and especially into being an executive chef as well. My first executive chef position was a Sofitel in Philadelphia. And so in that was really, it was a different opportunity. When I got the job, they were like, whoa, we didn't know you were so young. I was 23. They're like, we didn't know like that you were so young. We probably wouldn't have hired you if we'd realized that. And I was like, oh, thanks. That's cool.
I've definitely been in those shoes, and I think it definitely gives you this weird feeling of imposter syndrome almost, I guess, in a sense of, am I truly able to do the job I know in my heart that I can do, and I know that on paper it says that I can do, but why am I feeling like the odds are stacked against me?
Yeah. Well, and like I felt that, like what you said, imposter syndrome, like I feel that all the time. Like I still kind of feel that now. It's like, do I deserve what's in front of me? Did God give me this so that I could be, a great famous chef one day? Or do I have it because I deserve it because I can make a better pasta than the next guy? And so it messes with your mind, and I do have a lot of ideals that chefs really, don't normally have, I don't think. And so that's part of it. I am faith based. I'm a Christian. I sing and worship in my church, and and so that relationship that I have there with God and with people around me, has been huge for that too. And I think through those times that people say, "Hey, let's go out and do stuff." Another motivation for me was that saying, let me not get drunk this time. Let me not go out. And so that affects you because of your faith and beliefs.
Definitely. And I think it's important to be able to recognize those moments, specifically when talking about imposter syndrome, we look back at, the first thing is rationalize why we have what we have. So we look back at those moments where we made the sacrifice to, stay late or put in the extra hours, and those moments I think we appreciate maybe even more as we get older, because we understand that those sacrifices have, set us, farther ahead, or, has put us ahead of the competition, however you want to look at that. But I think it's really important that you talk about that, is being able to look back at those moments so you can sort of deal with success, I guess, in almost a way, as
Yeah.
odd as that sounds, or vice versa. On the other hand, realizing those moments when maybe you should have stayed after hours or should have went home and you didn't. And maybe that's why you're in the position that you're in. Obviously there's,
Yeah.
a million different factors there, but I think I like that you were able to kind of hint on those, the things that make you who you are today.
Right. Well, and imagine those times, like, I think about, Jeremiah Tower, just thinking about him, for instance, and I like how you guys got the chance to speak with him, and you saw his movie, I'm sure, the last Magnificent,
Right.
Definitely.
but like the thought of that, even the title alone, you say he was the last magnificent chef, that of that level, that era. And you see the Thomas Kellers, and then, Grant Achatz, like Truffle Boy gets to work with Grant Achatz, and like that's pretty cool. And so then I see those type of chefs.
He's not a man of
Yeah.
many words, so and cool, that's a stretch, because when he's in the kitchen standing next to you, there's a lot of extra sweat and anxiety going through your mind, but it's definitely a good
As your knife
environment.
shaking on that cutting board there. I don't know,
chef.
Ow.
And honestly, the more I saw him, I think like it never goes away. It's the same kind of anxiety where you want it, these are the mentors we're looking up to. We see their stories, we see their Netflix specials, and we're amazed by that story, and we're even more fueled to kind of go down that path and prove to everybody around us that not only do we got it, but we can take it all the way to the top and become a magnificent chef. That's, I think, in everybody's goal, especially the people we have on this podcast.
Right. But like, what do you think about, I know it's devil's advocate side, but there's already an Eric Repair, there's already Grant Achatz, there's already Daniel Hum, there's already Rene Redzepi. There's all these chefs that have already been changing the world, changing, the culinary landscape, even in Dallas, like we had Dean Fearing, and he changed everything here. He's created his own style of cooking, and Stephen Piles along with him and that as well. It's like, is there room for something new? Is there room for me to start a new path? Is fine dining going to be around long enough for me to, find my bearing and then have my own restaurant if I want one day? Like those are questions that circle in my head.
I love all those questions. And Doug knows me too well. I always have an answer for everything. So I'm going to let Doug speak first because I want to hear his opinion. But I have a pretty big opinion on this. And I've been kind of going into the culture of, how did the Chicago food scene come about, and been pretty interested in what I found. So Doug, take it away. What's your...
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question. And, that striving for something new is, I think, something we're always doing as chefs. And I know, my own grappling with this question, because it's something I've asked myself, is I always try and look at whatever situation I'm currently in. I'm not going to make the next, French Laundry 6-course meal working in Tampa, Florida right now. And so I think you have to recognize where you're at, and also new doesn't have to be something like, hot air balloons at Alinea, or the prosciutto and mango at TFL, or any of these very iconic, or even Massimo's burnt ends for the lasagna. You think about these dishes and they're like just out there, groundbreaking, crazy. Maybe in your situation, it's turning this crazy Cuban into this vegan variation because you have a big vegan influence, and now you've really affected a lot of people in your immediate area with something new. I don't think it comes from following other people. Like all those chefs that you mentioned, they didn't get there by stalking some other chef's Instagram and trying to recreate what they were creating. They got there by looking, at Noma is the perfect example of this with Chef Rene, but he got to where he is because he went outside, he looked around, and then he used all of his skills and ability to best represent what was right in front of him. And I think that's so important as young chefs and as young culinarians. We get caught up in this idea of imitation, and I think really we need to look more at our current surroundings and what we can do with what we have currently, and making that avant-garde decisions.
I think that's very, very well said. What's imitation and what's copycat.
Right.
I think if you're going off what's imitation versus inspiration.
Exactly.
Because you can see, even the truffle explosion, and you can recreate it. Obviously, if you're going to call it the truffle explosion, you'd be, doing it injustice. But if you recreate it in your own, sense and add your own, your own.
Use it as a muse.
Right.
Right.
I don't think that's, that's a problem. You're not using the exact recipe. You don't know exactly how it's made, I think, you get yourself caught up when you do use like that exact recipe and claim it as your own when everybody knows like, okay, that's not yours, But
or you don't pay homage to those before you.
Even like
Right.
I love having a conversation about Robuchon potatoes. Is it 50% potatoes? Is it 50% cream and butter? Or is it, vice versa? And like, you get different many opinions on it. They all come out great because we add a shitload of butter and,
Cream and salt.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's that like differentiator between like if somebody came to my restaurant or hired me for an event to do mashed potatoes, all three of us are gonna have different mashed potatoes because we all have three different taste buds as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely putting buttermilk and confit garlic in mine, even though if it's just regular mash, it's still going in there.
I like putting confit garlic too, and mascarpone. Actually,
Oh,
really nice. Yeah,
I like that.
thickens it too.
I
Yeah, and
haven't.
then you can
I
even put in
haven't
the
tried
Robo
that.
Coop. Oh yeah, it's good.
I know in the South, a lot of places down here will add sour cream to their mash, so I could see mascarpone
Yeah.
being an excellent, definitely an excellent vehicle for that.
I saw like a
Yeah.
Bon Appetit video where they made like mashed potatoes like whatever how many ways, the million different ways of making it, and they had like, so you don't have to reheat mashed potatoes if you add mayonnaise. You could literally store them in the cooler and they'll still be like soft mashed potatoes, but they're cold.
So they
So
won't solidify
Weird.
because
right,
of
they
the
won't solidify,
mayo.
but you can also heat it up as well. So it's very
Right.
like, I don't know how that would taste. I would never put 50% mayo and mashed potatoes.
Yeah,
But again, like there's so many
Oh.
different variations that you can do.
yeah.
And
Well, these taste like shit. Well, chef, you see, here's the thing: we can heat them up, and they're still liquid. So
and again, we're speaking from an American culture, but maybe somewhere in I don't even know where could be acceptable, right? There's
Right.
a lot of
Nebraska,
Yeah.
probably.
yes,
so.
I agree.
But getting back to with all these restaurants, with the Rene Redzepis, with the Grand Achatz, with the Charlie Trotters, with the Jeremiah Towers, they've built institutions. And I think if you really want to be a great chef, you need to build an institution where you train the next generation of chefs and you really give it like your all to them, and you like train the best of the best to your standards, right? I think if you work at Rene Redzepi's or Daniel Hum's kitchen, standards are going to be different. And if you come and say, yo, Rene Redzepi does his mashed potatoes like this, Daniel Hum's going to be like, well, does it say, Rene Redzepi on the door? No, this is how we do it. This is the recipe. And I think that's really a key factor and we need more of these people because it dies down, right? With the Chicago restaurant scene, there's been, many iconic restaurants, and it kind of all started, in Wheeling, which has nothing to do with Chicago. But that's when they started importing all these amazing products and kind of really shifting the culture of what is fine dining, and letting that kind of exist in Chicago. And then, from that kitchen in Le Francais in Wheeling, Chicago, the 20 cooks that work there and were ambitious to be like, yo, I learned what I need to know from this guy. I'm going to go open up my own spot, kind of moved it into Chicago. And then, everybody who's been in Charlie Trotter or is like alum at Charlie Trotter, and I've got to work, for Giuseppe Tentori, who was an alum, their standards are just impeccable. Their ideas, they've pretty much, anything I could come up, he'd be like, dude, like I did that 20 years ago. Like,
I've been
vegan,
putting mashed
vegetarian.
potatoes. I've been mayo mashed potatoes for years, kid.
Yeah, all of that, like, all the infusions and all that. Now we're taking it, to a different level with, infusions, and we're centrifuging it, and we're just adding, distillers and just, a lot of equipment if you're trying to go that way. But I'm just saying, like, these institutions are very important because the chefs that come out of those institutions train the next generation of chefs as well. And then just kind of keeps going on. So, it started with Escoffier, and who knows who taught really, Escoffier, and he took that, and then it's kind of been passed down. So I think it's the evolution of food exists in these institutions and these restaurants and these people who really dedicate, their time to educate their cooks. And I think, we've all worked at fine dining establishments. The chefs there really educate you. You're not going to get that education at McDonald's. You're not going to get that exposure, at a Chili's. The atmosphere is not going to be the same at, Applebee's or, even Olive Garden, all these chain restaurants. And sometimes even with hotels, they're kind of strapped, to that corporate, lifestyle where they're not able to really do that. So I think the fine dining, super fine dining, 3 Michelin star environments really are the ones that, have been propelling this forward. As well as, when Michelin wasn't in the United States or Chicago or LA and New York previously, those as well, the Jacques Pepin and Robuchons and all of that, that was before even Michelin came around. So I think that's why we're in this, right? Because of those stories and because of these people and, that inspiration of like, I want to work in this kitchen where, you put 156 dots on this plate and 1 pearl caviar on each one, and it has to be impeccable, and you measure everything with a ruler. Like, those are, I think, are the standards that get us going and fuel us up. And then obviously we kind of, not to say anything, but I think we dumb it down for everybody else until we can get them on the same level of understanding, right? And then you really build your team.
You definitely have to figure out where your team's, strengths and weaknesses lie. Our responsibility as leaders to bring our team to that standard, but we definitely have a responsibility as chefs to sort of continue to share this knowledge that has been, shared with us. Guest chef we had, Chef Emerson, definitely, shared those same resentments as far as, do we have enough chefs who are willing to turn out more great chefs? It's a whole nother level of commitment, being a chef who wants to also then, produce other great chefs. It's something that I think a lot of us have struggled with as being chefs, another hat that we have to, put into the balancing. But Chef Luke, a little bit to get back to your story. So, after having this experience in Italy and, being dedicated to the stove, so to speak, while you were over there, what were some of the big, if you want to call them epiphanies or just, knowledge, that you brought back with you after having that experience?
So over there and even here at Minibar in DC as well, another 2 Michelin star restaurant that, I got to step into.
What years were you at Minibar?
That was 2014. So I was already working for a hotel company, and so I was just dipping over just so I could step in the kitchen, and get screamed at by Jose every once in a while.
Mhm.
And so, but it's the passion behind the food. And so one of the things I actually noticed, in Italy specifically, was the chefs there were super kind, like, and they're kind in a way that they aren't here in the US. And so that's where I modeled my chef style after, seeing those chefs that, did take the time, the executive chef took the time, to spend with me, and so coming back, I read Alice Waters' Chez Panisse on the flight back. And so I was reading about that, and that's where I first learned about Jeremiah Tower and all of that. And so I was diving more into, what are the great chefs like, and seeing the way that, even reading about Chez Panisse and the food they were making too, and just having it fresh every day, changing the menu constantly. Maybe it's daily, maybe it's weekly. The French Laundry changing the menu every day. I started falling in love with that. Coming up with new ideas a lot. That ends up not being sustainable unless you have a restaurant based around it. So then my chef style, has consistently changed over the years. But I do hold true to training the staff like you speak of, and being kind to people. And every once in a while, obviously, you get thrown into a whirl, and maybe your head's not right, and you maybe go off on somebody. Maybe they deserve it, but for the most part, I try to keep it level with everybody and treat everybody with respect. And there's one thing that's happened here in Dallas, seeing that the restaurant at Savor, I didn't have a staff full of young people that were all trying to be chefs. I had like two or three, but the rest were older Hispanic people, men and women alike, and that was the main group in our kitchen. But I was training with my sous chefs, the whole staff, to get to another level, like you were talking about, where when I walked in, we had people that could barely flip a burger, that were deep frying hot dogs in one of our second kitchens, and then taking them from that fryer side of the station or prep into walking all the way through the line into the saute station, becoming leads, being able to get to be the person that calls tickets on the inside of the line, and making pasta from scratch, cutting meats, all of it, but training them because they want to be trained, and creating those next level chefs. And when Savor ended up closing, that was one of the things that I've heard from a ton of people is, wow, like, we didn't know how good our job was. We didn't know how great it was being in that environment, until we left. And then you see, like, oh, the chefs at the other restaurant down the street are not the same as when it was when I was working with Luke. And so that was a huge compliment for me. And so I'm waiting on an opening right now, to bring my staff back together and see whoever wants to come. Let's go. Let's build a team again, because we built a family, that really did stick by each other. It's just, the pandemic really killed it.
Definitely. I think that's, to Vlad's point of talking about building these, institutions, on a much smaller scale than, Charlie Trotter, the Alinea group, but, that same feeling, as an institution that you're creating, that family and what you're surrounding yourself with, and, those auras that you're giving off, also kudos to you to be able to recognize, we talked about it a little bit earlier about, facing the reality of your current situation, but, you knew where you wanted to go, and you knew who you had to get you there, and you had to, devise a plan and create, okay, where are we going to start? How am I going to get these guys? We talked about that a little bit earlier as well, but how are we going to get these guys to that standard, that level that I know that, we are able to do? And you got to sort of understand every single person as an individual. You can't lump all of your cooks in, okay, they're all going to learn at this pace, and they're all going to learn this thing, and then we're going to learn this thing. And it doesn't work like that anymore. And that approach to it, where you're able to look at everybody as an individual and, as you said, treat them with respect. I think it's so crucial into creating those environments where people want to come back and work for you, where, it's a bittersweet moment when you have those comments said to you. I've had similar comments said to me where it's like, wow, like, we never really appreciated how great it was to work with you. And, you think back to those moments where you're like, yeah, if only you had this appreciation when we talked about, the same thing the sixth time.
Right.
But you do feel that sense of like, all right, the frustrations and the headaches, it was all worth it. Going through the process, how I thought we should be, may actually have been the right decision.
Yeah. No, it's true. And even changing the menu, like we change the menu seasonally 4 times a year, and so there's big tastings that go into that, for the investment and, the investors and all of them, and having these tastings. And that was so exciting, to get to create new plates. But you create, I'm going to have 2 pasta dishes on the menu. I end up making 10 pasta dishes, different sauces, different styles, break it down. All right, I like these ones the most, continue breaking it down, and then eventually one of them ends up on the menu, maybe two. And that's huge, to be able to have that ability to create, to sit in the kitchen and say, I'm working on different pastas, actually, speaking of pasta. I'm just playing with ratios and stuff, 0 flour versus semolina, how much eggs, how much water, and putting it together. Should I let it sit and get dry before I cut it? All those things. And so putting everything together and getting to see the product, and it's so exciting and thrilling, to see great pasta, to touch it and feel it and say, wow, I made this, this is incredible. And that goes to anything. That goes for making, anything from scratch, and, getting to cook great steaks, seeing the quality of the product. It's so exciting. And the love for food, it does ebb and flow, the passion does, and that's one thing that I think it was Thomas Keller that said, that the passion ebbs and flows, but having that commitment every day, to say, I'm gonna cut the very best asparagus that I can cut today. That's huge. And that's what sets you apart and creates those institutions, that you speak of.
I like that quote and that idea of, ebbing and flowing, because, as we have these conversations, I think a lot of people, they sort of talk themselves out of being a chef or being in the culinary game because they think that we all are always 100% on. And, I've definitely had my streaks where, like, I'm like, wow, this whole month I've just been like loving cooking. And I've just, every single day, 24 hours a day, I've just been in it. But you definitely have those streaks where you have to, like anything, have that balance. And it is, a commitment every single day to be in this industry. But, where you place that time and how you time manage is, I think, crucially important to, like we talked about sustainability, the sustainability of our careers, not having that balance and recognizing when, you're feeling those feelings of frustration and knowing when to step out of the kitchen, because, the aura or, whatever you're bringing to the table right now is not helpful to the overall goal.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and you got to have the right vibes for your team, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, and kind of,
So,
I want to
go
like,
ahead.
yeah, I want to like tie everything back together and kind of say how important the fundamentals are.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
But, as we're talking to, Chef Luke, and you're saying, I was working 90-hour days, saying, you guys, no, I'm not going to go hang out. I'm going to go sleep. I think, just off hearing that, I know like how much it meant to you and how, how dedicated you were to succeed. Because I know, multiple times where I was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's, go for it. And that really sets you back because you don't get enough sleep. You're not on your A game, like Doug is saying. And then, you kind of, you're not going to get that next shot. You're not going to get that promotion because you kind of slacking in terms of, it really has to be like a perfect harmony between, your outside life and, your career and your life. And it really can't be separate if your ambitions are, to get somewhere, with recognition, well pay, and, in the right spot at the right time. It doesn't just happen, out of nowhere. And these fundamentals, and I think, when you do really step into a great kitchen and you inherit these fundamentals, when you go into a different kitchen, it's almost hard to do something wrong, even though that it's accepted there. Even that's okay. It's like almost like a no in your head because that was the culture that you were in, and you kind of built that habit and those really good habits. And likewise, it's really hard to come from bad habits and switch those around. And then, it's all about the work and the mentorships inside those restaurants. you know, whether you are James Beard, Michelin, or any restaurant, I guarantee, you know, people learn a lot of things, you know, not to talk down, you know, Chili's and Applebee's, but you can still learn there if you're hungry for it, right? There's still somebody with a culinary education in that kitchen that can give you advice, can mentor you, can expose you to things that you might have not have seen. And I think that's really amazing that, you know, we still have a lot of these people and a lot of these chefs. And the more we do this podcast, the more of these chefs we meet, and the more, you know, we're happy, and, you know, it kind of solidifies that our industry is going to not only survive, but, you know, thrive in the next coming years. And it, you know, really hurt us all to, you know, kind of say goodbye to our families. And, you know, a lot of chefs have had to move on, and we were talking about that in multiple podcasts. So, you know, where we lost a lot of great people that could have been the next Thomas Kellers and Grant Achatz and Jeremiah Towers, because they were not, you know, there at the right time. The circumstances didn't go where there, and they, you know, moved on and chose a different career path. And that's the real story. And to build a team, to, you know, to have people say, okay, you can open up now. And it's like, okay, but, you know, who's back with me? You know, who's got my back?
Hold on, I got 6 more weeks of unemployment checks.
And
You have to wait a second.
that is another reality that,
Yeah.
you know, we're not really able to offer. The margins aren't great at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was listening to another podcast with Muse, Mike Muser from Grace, or from Ever, and they were talking to Phil Vitale, and, you know, he's like, we have to, you know, if the food restaurant industry is going to survive, we have to charge more for the craft that we're providing. And I think that, you know, that stands really strong in terms of all chefs and executive chefs and sous chefs want to pay, you know, their lead line cooks and the most ambitious people more money. But in reality, you know, when you're sitting at that manager meeting, it's just the money's not there to be get, you know, it's very hard. It's a very thin margin, and there's a lot of errors that happen when you're training and bringing in product and doing recipe development, right? You have to be very, very, very precise. And I think the average person doesn't realize how much we're kind of taking on and bringing back to the world.
Yeah, that was actually a complaint that we had pretty often, was, you know, that our pricing is too high. And the thing is, like, I was literally getting the best quality product I possibly could, locally sourced as much, you know, as much as I could. But then getting from the best vendors, getting the best product. And so that was one part of it, and that goes just to your food costs. But then we were paying our staff well. Like, every person was getting paid what they deserved, you know, and that was a lot of money. And so when your staff is paid well, then they are more happy. You know, they can, and, you know, these chains, like I think of like Ocean Prime, that type of stuff, like they'll pay you walking in the door like $18 an hour, something like that. Just ridiculous amounts of money from what I experienced, you know, as a line cook, you know, when I was making nothing. And then my best line cooks were in the low 20s, you know, but then there were people that were in the lower side making 14, you know, and it's like, man, I had to work really hard to get to 14, you know, but now you have to pay that. And I do agree that we do need to pay the staff more, you know, and that's one of the big things that needs to happen, especially in Texas. You know, they don't want to pay cooks really, really well here. They look at McDonald's and they're like, oh, we're not going to, you know, have people at McDonald's making 15 an hour. And it's like, well, my line cooks over here that have been training for 10 years or longer, you know, are over here making 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 is great, you know, in comparison to that. So let's raise their wage, but we will have to raise the price of food.
I love that you said that, because it segues us into our next question, and a little bit about, you know, that Texas culture and that atmosphere. And, you know, if you guys have not seen, you know, Chef Luke Rogers' Instagram, definitely check it out. But, you know, I was snooping on there a little bit, and obviously the level of food that you're producing, when I think of Texas food, you know, apart from a couple places in Austin, Chef Kristen at Arlo is the one that pops out in my head. But, you know, besides these places, what you're doing is definitely, you know, probably pretty new, you know, to your area, and sort of people aren't going to understand the craft and be willing to pay for that craft. And so how do you see, I guess, that, Texas cultural shift? And, me as an outsider looking in, is it as, rigorous and difficult to kind of change people's minds?
Yes, it is. It's really hard in our market here because people don't appreciate it.
Right.
They appreciate the big steak, they appreciate, great alcohol, things like that, and they'll spend money. But one thing I actually saw somebody talk about this the other day, that somebody looks at a tasting menu, let's say it's $75, and you get four courses, right? Wine pairings additional, but it's $75, and somebody looks at that and says, "Whoa, that's too much money." But then they'll sit here and order all these appetizers and walk out spending the same amount of money, maybe even more. It's like because the food is presented differently.
Well, it
There's
was
not a
potato
lot of
skins and fried avocado wedges. So what can you expect?
exactly right. Versus, for us, like, I live in Arlington, which is, a suburb of Dallas. And so,
Right.
it's a seck of a drive. But so out here, there's no like local restaurants. There's like a couple, but they're not on that level, the level that I want to be in. And then even in Dallas, Plano, everywhere that I look, we're like right now I'm doing an opening in Plano. It's an Italian restaurant and it's like an Italian steakhouse vibe. It'll be really cool, like Texas flair, the whole deal, like handmade pastas, but I'm gonna have Wagyu steaks and Black Angus, Texas beef, things like that. And so I do have that fear when it comes to the food costs and things like that, and the pricing. And so our ownership is great, and so they're like, no, make the prices better. We want people to eat here, so make it more approachable. And I do wonder if that's sustainable long term, because we're in a business to make money. But if you look at it from we're going to make money in alcohol or we're going to make money, doing other things, then okay, let's do that. But it is hard to get people to say, to look at food and say, oh, I'm willing to spend $15 for, a pasta. And it's like, sir, I should be serving you 30, like this should be $35, you don't understand clearly.
No, and I think it's definitely, a struggle. We, sometimes forget that the term is culinary arts and that this
Right.
is a form of art, just like people, pay crazy amount of money, for a painting, or, you would pay, that album for your favorite, musician, or, going to see a movie from your favorite actor. All of these are different forms of art. And when you think about, places where the art is most recognized and sought after and deemed as quote unquote valuable, you think of those cities where the food scenes are really popular right now. You have Chicago, pre-COVID, but Chicago, you have New York, a little bit emerging over in LA. And I feel like food and art sort of run simultaneous. And so I can definitely see that being challenging in an area where maybe art isn't held at such a high value. So now you're also trying to persuade, a demographic of like, I know this is short rib pot roast, but you don't understand what kind of, cow this is coming from. And you don't understand these are truffle mashed potatoes. And, this specific carrot that I honey glazed to garnish it is actually from this garden that's 20 miles down the street. They can have the same thing in a Hungry Man meal, and it costs $5 at the frozen section in the grocery store. And
Right.
we all know that it's not the same, but it's to educate the difference. And I definitely dealt with that in parts of Florida that I've worked in. You can understand that level of perceived value within the consumer. It's just not there everywhere yet in the US. And so how we get there, I think, is just constant reminder. I think constant speaking, constant I think it's okay to educate your guests. I think you can do it in a playful manner. The menu I'm working on right now, we have all little tidbits around our menus, little plugs about being part of the Mexico Gulf Alliance, talking about we only use Creekstone Farms meats, and talking about our bread purveyor and that. And so it's like almost ads as to why you're advertising for yourself, you're advertising for this art form that you're creating. So I guess best of luck in, that area and trying to advocate for yourself and, teach your consumer base, because it can definitely be difficult when it's this new crazy idea that hasn't been sort of, pushed before in a demographic.
Yeah. Well, and one part of it is even like portion sizing. Like if you look at my Instagram, like you see like my portion sizes are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's because of the market that we're in. Like those plates could be
Right.
a quarter of that size, if I was doing a, 20 course tasting menu. But because of what I'm doing, I have to make like larger portions. So you get, I think 4 U8 scallops, on my scallop dish. And it's like, that's awesome. Those
That's,
are
yeah.
expensive.
I sell
Like,
2 for $22. Jeez.
yeah, yeah. What a deal. Yo, $22. Yeah, see? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
expensive. And we were getting them flown in from Maine. Like, and they're high quality, like 28.99 a pound is what
Dry
I was
pack?
paying for.
That
No,
was my next
yeah, actually,
question.
yes.
Yeah, dry pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the
Dry
in the
pack.
In
in
the
the
bucket.
yeah, in the can. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then the
had to.
saute cook doesn't clean off the abductor muscle, and I'm yelling at him from the expo station.
Exactly.
There's nothing better, yeah.
I always tell people this when I'm cleaning scallops. There's sometimes the ones that are like kind of pink, like a deep pink color.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
maybe one per bucket.
Yeah.
And so like that's the female. And so it actually has a different taste. There'll be like 1 per every 100 scallops.
Okay.
So
I didn't know it was
yeah.
I didn't know it was a different sex. I knew that it was sweeter because I've had them before. Kind of
Yeah,
like
they're
when
way
you
sweeter.
Yeah.
pumpkin sword versus regular sword.
Nice.
You can definitely tell the difference, but I did not know that meant it was the female. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that knowledge.
I had a chef teach me that about 10 years ago. It could be completely wrong, but I believe it's true. And I don't want to Google it to find out that it's not true.
Right.
So
it's like your
I'm gonna
one
keep teaching
memory. Yeah. I
that.
like
Yeah,
it.
That's
Raise
staying with
awareness
me.
for the pink scallops, everybody.
Right, it could definitely go both ways, right? Some chef could tell you that it's just what they eat on, and somebody can tell you.
Well, oh
it's
yeah, we will
different.
definitely a little bit later on be learning about the crazy origins of certain things, but a
Yeah.
little bit more about yourself before we wrap up here, Chef.
I actually have a question, Doug. I'm going to interrupt you.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm really interested. With the chef. Not many of us get to really travel to multi cities and cook there. And going from Memphis to DC to Dallas to Umbria. If you can kind of just let us know, what are the vibes in the kitchens like? What are the different? Is there any difference? Is it the same? Is it? What's really the differentiator that you saw between these cities, and how did you adapt to those different kitchen culture environments?
Yeah, so I've cooked even more cities than that. So Memphis is it's one main culture, and so and that's really similar to Washington D.C. With the people group there. Sorry, my infant is screaming.
It's all good.
The people group there don't want to work extremely hard, except for like just a handful, and so like it's very, very laid back, and it's hard to get people to work. But then when you get enough people in the kitchen, eventually the job gets done. It's just hard to get them started up. And that was the same thing I experienced in DC outside of Jose Andres, but Mini Bar had people from all over, so that's not fair. And so Jose Andres is a lot like in Italy, the same type of vibe. There's people from all over coming just to cook there for one reason, like we're just here to do this. So the passion level is super high. Like the way the kitchen is, like you can cut it, like the tension with a knife. It's tough. And I know you guys have been in those kitchens too, where like that's really difficult. And you have to come in, you are sweating because chef is right next to you. Versus California and LA, like they were so calm, like just relax the whole time, like yeah man, whatever. But the job is getting done. But they're talking about going to the beach. Philadelphia was a lot more cool than I thought it would be. That's where I got my first executive chef job with the Sofitel. And so I swore that it was going to be so scary because everybody down here said, hey, Philadelphia, they're the worst. Like you'll get mugged. And I was like, hopefully not. And nothing bad ever happened to me up there. I was completely fine. And the people were great. They were exciting. Like I think Philly's a food city on the rise also. You know, obviously like Lebec Thin closed, you know, it might be opened by somebody else, but you know, it's not the same as it was, but they do have some great chefs in Philly.
Yeah, one of
But
my
then here in,
favorite chefs is in Philly, Mike Solomonov. Have you had the
yeah,
pleasure to eat at Zahav? Uh,
yes, yeah. Oh my gosh, ridiculous. The amount of talent there is crazy, crazy.
and just kind of
Yeah,
like to just do a little segue, but I love that you know mentioned all these, you know, in each city there's these, you know, restaurants that draw people from all over the world to learn how this chef does it. And I think that is amazing, and that's what makes, you know, the food scene in those cities great and really advances it forward.
yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I do want. I want to have that where people want to come to my restaurant to work with me. You know, I think that's a bigger compliment to me than having a bunch of guests outside of your door. Having chefs want to come work for you, having the respect of, you know, the culinary school calling you saying, hey, let me send some students to you. I know they're going to learn with you. You know, you're going to roast the veal bones the right way. You know, I know they're going to learn the right things from you, the fundamentals. You know, and so that's one of the things that did happen to me, you know, is having a lot of these students coming, wanting to learn and grow, and saying, hey, I didn't like how I was treated in my last kitchen, but I heard that you're a lot different. So I want to come and work with you. And so in still getting to perform at a high level and, you know, experience that pressure of like the food's got to go and it's got to go and it's got to be the right quality and plated the right way, all those things, but you don't have to be screamed at for it. Right. And so that's kind of where I made my difference, you know, and as a chef here in Dallas, and hopefully we'll continue to do that, you know. But I do want to get to that point where people know me, you know, and I went on Food Network last year and got to, you know, go cook in our Alex Garnaschelli's show, because I want the exposure. And then, you know, I did some more things like the Iron Fork, stuff like that, you know. And so getting to do those things is awesome. And you get seen so people know my name, but you know, then they have to come and work with me and really get to see like this is how, you know, Luke peels a scallop and he'll tell me that maybe BS story. We don't know, you know, and so like creating those relationships is huge. And having the relationship with farmers, things like that. Like me and Bonton Farms, the guy that was running it, we became like great friends because I was always like, dude, give me whatever you got. Like, let me see the goat milk, you know, let me see what I can do with it because nobody likes goat milk here. So let me see if I can make them like it, you know. So things like that. But yeah, I want more. And I wonder, you know, how other chefs feel about that too. Wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard, but wanting to have the ability to get to do whatever you want in the kitchen, you know.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I have a question for you since I've been a fanboy of Food Network and I've been trying to get on there for a couple years now, filling out those
yeah,
applications. I kind of just wanted to be
man.
let known, you know, like what is the process, you know, and how rigorous it is because you know I kind of went through it and you know people look outside and they're like, oh, this guy made it on Food Network, like, oh, get a free pass, whatever. But in reality, there's also a lot of back work, just like, you know, in the restaurant scene where people think that this burger just magically appears and ends up on their table, you know, but it's not. There's, you know, thousands of steps that were taken in preparation and you know execution to get that burger on their plate. So if you can, since you do have that experience, I would love for you to share that.
Yeah. So what's crazy is at one time I got a bunch of phone calls for different TV shows because I was going online and I was, you know, I was getting this email. I signed up for an email alert from different casting agencies. So JS Casting is out of New York. They do tons of food shows. And so now at this point, I get messages all the time. Hey, you want to come on our show? And I'm like, I was on a show last year. I don't think I can. That's in my contract. Like, I think it's 2 years. But that process from getting onto the show, so it's the casting, filling out the application, filling it out again, which was great. Like I was like, cool, you have my information, you need it again, sure, let me do it. And then they do a video call. So
And
it's like a video call
it's
where you
not like three questions and attach your resume. It's pretty thought out
no,
questions, and you have to be pretty,
a
you know.
lot. Yeah. And it's like, did I answer the same question the same way? I don't know. But they'll get, you know, they'll get the answer that I was
This isn't
feeling
a
that
lie
day.
detector test, right?
Right. So then they'll have you come and, you got to set up yourself to make sure that, there's not a fire in your background or whatever. You're wearing pants, and they have you do a video conference and they record it. And so they'll ask questions like, all right, so I'm going to tell you that the show that we're doing, they love the color green. So when you respond to this question, say, I love the color green because, and so you have to do that over and over again. And so you're like, my favorite beef is this beef because, and it's a role play game. And so you do that video, and that one takes like an hour and a half or so maybe. And then they call you back again. You do another Zoom, for somebody else. And this time you might just have a conversation with somebody. And then I had a third one that they finally confirmed me, and they were like, cool, we like you, you're going to come out. And then they started sending me emails. So it was months of just emails of, yeah, you're going to come out. We don't know what date, like maybe in December, maybe in January. We don't know. And so a long process of emails. And then they eventually said, all right, we have your show date. You need to be in LA on, January 17th. And so we're going to set you up in this hotel. We're setting up your flight, and so then I flew out, and they had me sit in a car. We all got picked up, me and the people I was in the show with, all got picked up in the same Uber at the airport.
And did you know anybody that like in the car?
No.
Was that like an
No,
awkward ride to the hotel?
was
Just
so
like pretty
weird.
quiet. Nobody's trying to give
it
up
was
their
a long
strategy or
So
who they
Yeah.
are, what they
What do you
cook,
come
where
here
they're
often?
from.
Right. Asking questions, like trying to find out your strategy. And it's like, I don't know what my strategy is. Like, I'm just going to come and see what happens. Like, I don't think I'm going to win anyway. These aren't real cooking. Like, this is like this made up scenario.
You're like,
See
wait,
if you
this is
can
a
handle
cooking
it.
show? I thought I was on Oprah. Hold on. Wrong plane.
Yeah. And so then, we got to the hotel, kind of like relax and stuff, but had to be up at like 2 a.m. the next morning, and they do like hair and makeup, which I didn't need any makeup because I'm beautiful already. And so they just make sure that you look the right way, your apron fits, all that. And then we went to the set. We hung out there for about 4 hours until,
So this is at like
you know,
5 or 6 in the morning, right?
so early.
Oh.
Yeah. The producers went and got us some like Starbucks coffee, and we're like, do you want a donut? And I'm like, don't think I want a donut right now.
I throw it up.
Yeah.
I'm so
and so then-
nervous. Yeah.
and like you're drinking coffee on an empty stomach. Yeah. And you're shaking. So then finally, like the famous chefs that are in charge of this show up, like Christian Petroni, Alex Garnaschelli, and Artie Sequeira were my chefs. I didn't know who Artie was before then, but Christian Petroni, like he's ridiculous, like great pizza places all over New York, and then Alex Garnaschelli, like Iron Chef, the whole deal. And so getting to meet them was awesome. And then they start the show, kind of lay out like, yeah, this is your area, this is where you're going to be. And so then they go through a whole process of shooting something and then saying, all right, take number 2. And then now they'll say like, all right, for the show, I was on a supermarket stakeout. And so they make you run with your cart up to the grocery store to like beg people for their groceries. And so they make you like, they say, all right, 3, 2, 1, go. So then you run with your cart, and then they're like, all right, cut. And then you have to do it again and actually run to the grocery store so they can get like those scenes. And then Alex Garnaschelli, like they, cast her and ask her questions, and she walks them through like whatever she's going to say. And then if she messes up, she says it again. And then, you finally start cooking. You have your timer, the whole deal.
I thought
And so
Alex
in the
Garnaschelli
cooking-
would be perfect, one take wonder, But I
Yo,
know that
not all
We're all
TV is not.
humans.
It's not that.
Turns
right?
out we're all
And
humans.
I love that we're able to have you, share this experience, because I think if I heard a
Not
podcast
every
like
day.
this, not every day,
Yeah.
but when I heard if I was 18 and I heard a podcast like this, I would be like, that's dope. Like sounds like
Yeah.
you put in, you
Yeah.
put in the work, and then you get to enjoy that experience, and it is like a once in a lifetime experience, because
Yeah.
the chefs are going to be different every time. The people you're competing with are going to be every time. The day, the mood, all of that. And then you have that out there, for the rest of your life to kind of look back at.
Right. And
Yeah,
like,
so
I probably
funny.
shouldn't tell you this part, but I will, because it's deeply personal, that when we have the show, so like we did the cooking, we go round by round. In the morning we had 2 rounds, and I kicked serious butt, like, and so I was awesome. Then the third one in the afternoon after lunch, I I lost in the finals, and I didn't think it was fair. I was like, I see like how we both, we're 50-50, but I felt like the other person had like a better story and that's why they won. And so then when I finally got back to the hotel, like I just broke. Like I was like crying, like a kid, just sad. Like, man, like I really, put all this work in just to come out here just to lose. Like how embarrassing. And like that hit me so hard. So then I ordered a pizza and, ate most of it. And then I went to sleep, and then the next day they had you go back and do these interviews. And so then you have to sit through this interview where you're like post where where they'll like pan to the person and be
Right.
like, yeah, and at this moment I was cooking this. That was the second day. And so the whole time I had to pretend like I was trying to win, even though I knew that I'd lost. And it's weird. It messes
All
with your
right, put
head.
on your big boy face.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But then after
Yeah.
that, going home and stuff, the biggest thing that happened for me out of that, I was actually thinking about this the other day, was that if I hadn't have lost that, I would have never cared to be an Iron Fork. And Iron Fork is this huge thing here in Texas, where chefs compete and stuff. And, you get to like, it's normally like a tournament and everything. And you compete with a bunch of chefs, and the winner, like you go in all these magazine stuff. Like I was in Dallas Observer and Houston Press even before competing, and then I ended up winning. And so I was in both magazines, and again, getting to be seen, news outlets as the winner of, Iron Fork for Texas. But I was so motivated because I lost the last time, that I said, this time, like this competition, doesn't matter who it is. Like they put me up against Chris Shepard, one of like the chef from Houston, one of his boys, like that's the chef of one of his restaurants. And I was nervous, like, because I was like, this guy's got to be way better than me. So, showing up to that, I had so much extra fire, because I lost and experienced losing. I was like, nah, this is mine, even before going. And, and so I ended up winning. But it's like things like that happen, and it's like taking a negative and turning it into a positive, but that's how life is, ebbs and flows.
Definitely. And I think it's, important to touch on there too, how important it was for you to, win something local and close to your heart. We talked about that a little bit about, how do we be new in our own respects? And I think, just like we talked about this sense of being new in our own community, it's also being recognized in our own community, and, having that feeling of, all right, I am the best that I can be for my current surroundings. And I think that you proved that. I definitely appreciate you sharing that experience of what it's like, to be on a television show, because it's definitely not every day where you get to, talk to someone who has lived that. And I know, whether we want to admit it or not, all of us want to be on Chopped, so
Right.
being able to, understand what that experience actually looks like behind the closed doors, and definitely appreciate you bringing that to the
Yeah,
show tonight.
for sure.
Well, I think before we, wrap up, Chef, and again, thank you so much for sharing, all of your experiences with us. If people are looking to, either reach out and work in your kitchen, or, reach out and see, what does it look like, taking on this challenge of, making Texas cuisine a little bit more, plate oriented, and, using better ingredients, where can they find you? Where can they, get to you?
Yeah. So Instagram, Chef Luke Rogers. And then, you can email me, Chef Luke Rogers at iCloud. I'm on Facebook, Luke Rogers. I'm almost capped out on Friends though, because after I did the TV stuff, that exploded. But yeah, you can find me anywhere. Just, you could even call me if you can find my cell phone number somewhere, but Instagram's a great way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Instagram it is. Well, I talked a little bit about there being some foreshadowing of sort of wishy-washy origins. And so before we let you go, Chef, we have had quite the plethora of answers, but we are on a mission to figure out the origin of the word 86. And it's something that we all universally kind of just spit out and yell at each other, and we all understand, and nobody really questions it. But have we had some answers about the origin of this word? So if you could share with us maybe your take on the origin, or where you first came across
Oh,
this word.
man. So first restaurant I worked in, they would do that. but no one ever talked about where it came from.
Right. It's just
Like,
like, oh, okay, yeah, I got
it's
it.
just it's like that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't we say 0 instead of 86?
Right.
Like,
Right.
that's so funny. It had to have been like a mistake on a chalkboard somewhere where somebody wrote the wrong thing and was like, "Oh yeah, that means we don't have it." You know, that's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Every
It's like the
I have
time,
chef's
no
always
idea.
right. The chef's always right. He
Yeah,
wrote 86. It's like, don't question it. It's an
right, right.
86.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which chef exactly shared this, but he was telling his story of 86. He had a funny story about 86 where this young waitress comes up and goes, "Oh, 36 the mashed potatoes," and then this, older woman, OG in the game, goes like, with the cigarette voice, like, not 86. I can't even. You guys have to look back at it, but you know what I'm talking about, Doug. That
Yeah,
story.
yeah, it's
Anytime
the punchline was, yeah, it's not 36, it's 86. These are
these are
36.
36s, yeah.
Yeah.
And the way he said it and the way, everything, it was just like every time somebody says 86 now, I just think about that. And then the other interesting is like going back on the soldier or war like mentality, or you take somebody 8 miles out and 6 feet under. That's kind of the two
Wow.
things keeps coming around. So really don't know if it came from like that military brigade style of whatever
Yeah,
era
we've had
of
a
that
radio
chefs.
transpondent. Definitely a lot of different origins. So we will
Wow.
hopefully find the true origin. But honestly, I love that there's such a variation of answers. And then there's chefs too, where it's just like, wow, yeah, wait, hold on. Why do we just recognize that as, happenstance and something that we really question? So we definitely appreciate you sharing your take on that with
Yeah.
us. And it's interesting. We'll have to compile a list of all the different reasons why 86 exists, maybe after the end of this season or something to that effect.
For sure. That's awesome. How funny.
Well, Chef, thank you again so much for tuning on with us tonight. We definitely sharing your version of, your world and, what Texas cuisine looks like and kind of what you're pushing for, and your experiences that you've had are definitely unique. So it was real honor to be able to kind of record those and listen to those. And, hopefully anyone out here who's listening has been able to take something away from the show tonight and, bring that with them to their own kitchens.
Yeah, hopefully so. Thank you so much for having me. Like, it's an honor to be here. Tell Jeremiah Tower I said hi.
We will. We'll shoot him a text.
For sure.
Hopefully
Thank you guys.
we get him to watch this on a consistent basis. But he's a busy man doing a lot of things, so it's pretty cool that he's able to share that time, and we appreciate you coming on this pod, sharing your time, sharing your experiences. We had a pleasure having you on, and we wish you best of luck. And we love the entire story. I love the entire story, and it's really cool the experiences that you were able to share and bring to our pod, and we appreciate that very much. And eventually we'll make a road trip down the United States and Sweden and Canada and get to try all of our podcasteers' food. And we're super excited to get that going as well. As always, guys, make sure to follow, like, subscribe. Make sure to show Chef Luke Rogers some love. And then, like he said, if you guys find his number, reach out to him. Otherwise, hit him on the
Hit
gram.
him up on the DMs. Hit him in the DMs.
For sure. Hey, how do I get one of those shirts? The ones behind you.
Well, great question.
merch.
So these beautiful shirts, beautiful
We
hat,
did not
and
pay him
really
to ask that, by the way.
soft hoodies that feel amazing and get you really in the mood for a nice hour-long podcast. You just hit up our Instagram page. We have a beautiful link tree. It will actually show where we stream all our podcasts and where you can find us there. And also we have a nice Etsy page where you can find these beautiful creations and support our channel. And likewise, as the merch comes in, as the merch sales come in, we're all about spreading that love and sharing it to, our industry and kind of, putting it back in our industry and where we want that. So these shirts are
Definitely.
really, pretty much not for profit. but without legally
awesome.
saying that. But yeah, we're just doing our thing, and this is so awesome that we get to, you know, have an hour long conversation with a chef from Dallas who had so many amazing experiences. And you know, I want to be on the Food Network. Just you sharing that is like a great inspiration, and like helps me understand, you know, what are the steps that I need to take, you know, to kind of get there. And I think that's very important, and I think that's where, you know, things are trending nowadays for the younger generation is we are becoming our own institutions. You know, I can look at Chef, you know, Luke Rogers' Instagram and get a lot of knowledge and value from doing that and following him, and he's creating his own, you know, niche, and it's amazing how that has grown into such an amazing tool for us chefs. But I'm going to wrap this podcast because I can go on for hours. But again, it was amazing having you on the pod, and, you know, pleasure meeting you and becoming acquaintances, friends, and we'll be spreading a lot of love on your Instagram page.
Sure. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Thank you everybody for tuning in tonight and checking this out. As always, please stay safe and well, I guess not in Texas, but wear your masks, everybody.
Not in Texas, not in Florida either. All right, guys, have a good day, or good night, or good morning.